What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with FantasyPros, bringing you my top 10 waiver wire ads for Week 17. But before we get started, if you want a chance to win a signed Traylon Burks Tennessee Titans mini helmet courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now. Comment below on this video, and that's it. Make sure to turn on notifications to know when new videos drop and to find out if you've won. Now let's go ahead and dive right in. Number 9, Gardner Minchu. Proceed with caution on this one and have a backup plan because it is very possible he doesn't play this week. But if Jalen Hurts misses another week, Gardner Minchu is the top quarterback ad of the week. Minshew Mania is back with 24 completions for 355 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles, plus 1 rushing touchdown. And while the turnovers were rough, they weren't all really on him. But this is really what we expected out of Minshew. He can run, but he doesn't really have big rushing upside, so this is essentially his ceiling. But his floor is very stable. He is a solid streaming option surrounded by talent. If Hurts is out, Minshew is a top 12 quarterback again. Number 8, Richie James. The emergence of Richie James has been very interesting to watch. He had inconsistent usage earlier in the season, but over the past 5 games, he's become a very consistent presence within the Giants' offense. In Week 16, James caught 8 of his 12 targets for 90 yards. The Giants have played Washington twice over this stretch, and those were 2 understandably bad games for James. But outside of those performances, he's had a minimum of 15 fantasy points in PPR per game over that stretch with 2 touchdowns. The only downside here is that the yardage just isn't going to be very high within this offense. Even in a rare 300-plus yard performance from Daniel Jones, no Giants receiver eclipsed 100 yards because the ball is spread around fairly evenly. But James is an option for flex in deep leagues next week. Number 7, Isaiah Hodgins. Surprise! If you thought that I would have just one Giants receiver on my list, you were wrong. I have never been opposed to rostering Giants receivers. This will be very quick because the statistics for Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James are fairly similar. Hodgins has had 3 touchdowns over the past 4 weeks and caught 8 of his 11 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown in Week 16. Much like James, there's not huge yardage upside here, but he's pushed his way into a consistent performer. And this week's matchup against Indianapolis is good. On paper, they have been strong against the pass, but they have been extremely inconsistent, allowing huge games to opposing teams. I like Hodgins this week. Number 6, Cuba Hubbard. I had to double check roster percentages because I was very surprised to see that Cuba Hubbard was less than 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues. Week 15 was definitely an underwhelming performance, but he's been a consistent presence for the past month and has split the backfield with Donta Foreman. He had 12 carries for 125 yards in Week 16. He had no targets, so that did limit his upside, but he is no stranger to receiving work and has had touchdown opportunities as well. They face Tampa Bay this week, which is a terrible matchup for running backs, but that might benefit Hubbard. If they do have to lessen the groundwork and increase receiving, it's a good thing for him because he is the one that they prefer in the pass game. He's not an ideal option, but you could do a lot worse. Number 5, Romeo Dobbs. Romeo Dobbs' Week 16 performance wasn't really spectacular. He was 3rd in targets behind Allen Lazard and Christian Watson, catching 3 of his 6 targets for 36 yards. But remember Dobbs earlier in the season when Watson was hurt? He had multiple games with more than 8 targets in one game where he caught all 8 of his targets for 73 yards and a touchdown. Christian Watson suffered an injury in Sunday's game, and while we don't know the severity at the time of filming this video, he was ruled out fairly quickly, and the Packers likely want to be cautious with their breakout rookie. If Watson is unable to suit up, Dobbs steps up as the wide receiver 2 against Minnesota, and at this point, receivers playing against Minnesota are a must start. Both Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James had incredible games last week against Minnesota. Add Dobbs immediately. Number 4, Tyler Algier. Tyler Algier is taking over the Falcons' backfield. And while the Falcons aren't a spectacular team, they are very committed to the run in any game script. So despite the 9-17 loss to Baltimore, Algier had a fantastic game with 18 carries for 74 yards and 4 receptions on 5 targets for 43 yards, while Patterson had just 8 carries for 17 yards and 1 reception for 14 yards. This isn't unusual. We saw this last year with Patterson and the Falcons. The only difference this year is that last year, Mike Davis was the one sharing the backfield, and neither one of them had anything left in the tank. But Tyler Algier is on fire this year and having a strong finish to the season. I would expect this to continue through the remainder of the season. And next week's matchup against Arizona is very running back friendly. Algier could be an RB2 in week 17. Number 3, DJ Chark. I'm going to make a couple of exceptions this week because there's a couple of players that are just barely over 50% rosters that are great must-adds this week. DJ Chark is one of those guys. The Detroit offense was all over the place this weekend and essentially abandoned the run. And Chark was a big beneficiary with 4 receptions on 5 targets for 108 yards. All of the touchdowns went to Shane Zylstra, which was very wild to say the least, and it limited the fantasy points for receivers, but I wouldn't expect that to be a regular occurrence. Aside from one terrible game against the New York Jets, which is very expected and explainable, Chark has been solid since returning to full health after his 7-week absence. He's seen a decent amount of targets, yardage has been excellent, and he's had touchdown opportunities. Next week's matchup is at home against Chicago. He should continue to be productive. Number 2, James Cook. James Cook is not a lock for a repeat performance next week. Cook had 11 carries for 99 yards and 1 touchdown, and 1 reception for 9 yards, but that was against Chicago. That is a far easier matchup compared to the Week 17 battle against a Cincinnati team that just held Ramondre Stevenson to his worst game of the season. But the Bengals were able to focus on the one good aspect of the Patriots' offense and shut it down. That luxury doesn't exist with the Bills because they are such a huge threat all over the field. So by no means is this a great matchup, but the likelihood of the Bills being unable to move the ball is slim. Cook isn't the ideal flex option, but he's had double-digit fantasy point performances in 3 of the past 4 games. He is a viable option this week. Number 1, Jahan Dotson. While we aren't entirely sure who will be throwing the ball to him next week, Jahan Dotson is a must-add. Dotson is on fire, and there doesn't appear to be anyone that can stop him. Dotson caught 6 of 9 targets for 76 yards and 1 touchdown in Week 16 against a tough San Francisco defense. He's had 3 touchdowns in the past 3 games and a minimum of 16 fantasy points. He started off the season in a similar fashion as a touchdown magnet with 4 touchdowns in his first 4 games before suffering an injury. And now he is fully back and integrated into the offense, playing a minimum of 79% of snaps and thriving. Week 17 is a matchup against Cleveland, which is typically a more run-friendly matchup, but I would still expect Dotson to be a major part of the offense. Thank you for watching this video. And remember, if you want a chance to win a signed Treylon Burks Tennessee Titans mini helmet courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now. Comment below in this video and that's it. Make sure to turn on notifications to know when new videos drop and to find out if you've won.
Thanks for tuning in to the FantasyPros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos, and while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at FantasyPros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.